Welcome to ADU. I'm your host, Brent Jones. I serve as the Deputy AD of External Operations at Troy University. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with two Director of Athletics, Pat Kraft, Director of Athletics at Temple University, and Bryan Maggard, Director of Athletics at University of Louisiana. This is probably the topic that is the most least discussed and probably the most important that I have seen in the last 20 years working in college athletics. The topic that we'll be discussing today is getting things done. So let's go ahead and jump right on in, guys. Thanks for joining us. Both of you also have your PhD, so I assume this will be a very high-flying
very much
conversation.
So, yes. Probably not, but yes.
So let's talk about it. Being an AD, it is a time trap, okay? So everybody is coming to you for lots of different things. How do you stay strategic in your calendar and in your agenda day in, day out? Pat?
Well, I think you got to have control of, as best you can, of your calendar. I think that's and I've learned that over time. I think you have to go in, and for me, my process is probably different than, everybody has their own process, but I'm an early riser. I look at my phone. It's funny, that's the first thing you do when you get up in the morning, but you look at the day that's blocked out for you. And, I make sure that, 5:30 in the morning, I'm getting myself ready for the day. Okay, here's the key things that I need to accomplish. Write it down on a notepad. If something stays on there too long, you're like, all right, well, get that done today and move it up. But I think it's really controlling it and having the confidence in controlling. You only know what you can control, right? And so you can't wear yourself out because it takes a lot. And you don't know, by the way, when you get that list going, what's coming at you. It could be something completely different, and that happens probably more often than not, right?
Yeah, along those same lines, I would tell you that I try to adopt the philosophy of scheduling my priorities versus prioritizing my schedule. Because if I do the latter, a lot of junk will fill up that schedule, right? So, whether it's faith, family, health, job, schedule those priorities onto your calendar, and I have found that really helps well with trying to accomplish some type of work-life balance.
So both of y'all came up through the ranks, okay? So Deputy AD, Executive Associate AD, so you were the number 2 or the number 3 at one point. How much do you rely on that for your job to be able to get that done? We'll talk about administrative assistant and how important that is a little bit later, but talk about your direct reports, and if there's one person or if there's your cabinet per se, your leadership group, how important is that for you to be able to trust them to get a lot of these micro or macro things done?
Well, I think it's paramount. I mean, I have a great senior staff. It's not one individual that takes the load. You have to spread it out because there's so many things, whether it's student welfare issues, compliance, and just external operations, internal operations. So I really depend on them quite a bit, and they know that, and I think that's good. I empower them. I'm not over their shoulder, hey, what do you do that? And then they keep me informed as we go, but we always meet. There's meetings after meetings after meetings just to keep everybody in the loop. I like to bring everybody in the meeting to get everybody's opinion, and we usually come to a conclusion that we all agree on, but I think that is paramount. I think staff, I didn't realize it as the number 2 or whatever you want to call it, how important that role or those other senior leadership roles are to the athletic director. It's paramount.
Gotcha. Bryan?
Yeah, I would agree. Certainly I have a senior leadership team, and I rely heavily on those individuals to provide the necessary leadership over their respective areas. I'm a firm believer in delegating. I think that's critically important. You have to surround yourself with good, competent people who can not only carry out tasks given to them, but have the proactive foresight to run their areas. Because I look at my folks as, you're the content expert in our department. My director of compliance, hopefully, has forgotten more about compliance than I'll ever know. So I'm going to, rely on him to guide us, as an athletics department. And so delegation to me is really, really critical. We have our share of meetings. I don't want to overmeet, but I want to make sure that when we are meeting, it's efficient and everybody comes to the table knowing what needs to be brought up at that level, and then they can work with their respective units on more of the detailed type of things. And then going to the administrative assistant component, that's I've learned in my short 15 months as the athletics director how critically important that position is. You need somebody who, I at least need somebody who can stay one step ahead of me, who can keep me aligned, help me know, what's coming up next, but also schedule my day appropriately. So there's got to be a lot of interaction and communication with that individual.
So as your administrative assistant, let's dive a little bit deeper on this, drill down. Is she or he able to schedule meetings without your permission or authority to be able to put on your calendar? Is it a shared calendar? Do you share your calendar with anyone else in the department?
I do. I share my calendar with the administrative assistant, and she does have the authority to put things on that calendar, but as we've worked longer together, she has a much better sense and feel on what is a priority and what not. It goes back to, again, scheduling your priorities versus prioritizing a schedule. And it's still a work in progress. We're not quite there yet, but that's one of those relationships that, like any good one, comes with time.
Got you. How about yourself? Talk
Oh,
about
I would agree 100%. And my assistant has access. She'll schedule. She'll hey, do you need to meet with this? How important is this? Can we kick it for two weeks down the road? And we have that dialogue. But she's been with me now for 3 years. She knows how I work and when my times when I'm firing on all cylinders and when you're not. And so she does a really good job of. I mean, honestly, sadly, I haven't had her for the last month for personal reasons. And oh my gosh, I mean, I've been struggling. I'm like, oh, how do I, because she really, I'm at her control. Right. And now my chief of staff has access to, and he can get in and look at some things and move things around. But it is, I think that relationship, it goes to trust, because there's a lot of things that come across our desk that you really have to trust that individual to just communicate with you. I think everything goes back, when even going to senior staff or leadership team, is the communication piece. Everybody needs to be aligned and know, and that goes with your schedule and where you need to be. But yeah, that job is very critical, I mean, in my opinion.
So let's talk about, as an AD, as a deputy AD, senior associate, executive associate, whatever that may be, there's always a lot of balls in the air. You have a lot of things going on at all times, and then you need to be able to push your strategic initiatives, goals, vision. How do you prioritize as an AD to be able to move forward, because you have a lot of macro and micro things, maybe even a crisis that might come about that we've seen in the news of recent. How are you able to prioritize that with your staff and your calendar effectively?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. There's macro issues that are ever present, whether it's capital projects or strategic plans or there's a myriad of those things. Ticket sales is always one that comes up, right? And then there's the micro, and the micro can change on the hour. It can change on the minute. And I think it's understanding you can't forget the macro. You cannot let it go, especially for departments like ours that are smaller than our peers. You've got to be constantly, we talk about the grind all the time. And you have to be open and focused on not losing sight of the macro. But right now, this micro issue has to get done, and you constantly come back to it. So I have, there's meetings that academics, every 2 weeks, compliance every 2 weeks. Those you get in a rhythm, and you constantly stay in touch with those elements. But I don't care how good your schedule is. There is going to come something that will come in 3 to 4 times a week that you had no idea, really thought when you opened, when you woke up that morning that it was coming. And that's part of the job.
Right.
Yeah, and that's about adaptability.
Right.
One email, one phone call can derail your whole day. You can be as organized as you think you are, and one bit of information will totally consume.
So talking about that, so when you look at all these macro issues that you want to be able to get done, we talk about, are y'all to-do lists? How does that work? You move off, you continue to, are you a whiteboard? Do you have it in your phone? What are the clear objectives and priorities that you're setting for yourself as well as for the department? Let's start with you, Bryan.
I operate with what I call a executive operations book, and it's a 3-ring binder, and it's segmented, with different categories, and one of those categories are my top priorities. And again, those are typically more macro. It might be a facility project, it might be, we're looking to adjust our giving model or whatever, right? And so those are the things that kind of keep me aligned. I'm always reviewing those in my head. What's the next step? What do we need to be doing? Those are typically the things that I'm pushing, right? Now I'm delegating responsibility to members of my team, but those are the big picture items that my staff knows that's on my radar. And when we do get together as a group, you better be providing some updates in these areas because they know that that's important to me. And then, the operations book can get a little bit more detailed, under my ticket sales section. I might have written down what our football season ticket goal is. And, that's, again, just things that I can constantly review and make sure that I'm on top of. But then to Pat's point, there's a lot more micro, things that are getting accomplished that I'm really It's not on my radar, and I don't need it to be, because if it's on my radar, then I really don't need somebody else
Exactly.
in that position to be doing that job.
Got you.
Yeah, I think for me, to that point, I have the macro, whether it's a list on my phone. If you go on my phone, there's, even the two of us talking in the hallway or here, you talk to people, and, oh, that's a really good idea. I'm gonna, and so you have those major initiatives that you work through. The micro and the daily things always have to correlate to the macro, so that you want them to. If you have these large objectives, the day-to-day stuff needs to align with where you want to go from the macro side. So I'm a big legal pad. I have, if you go in my office, there's legal pads everywhere, and I take notes, and I'll have the day in and day out stuff. What I want to do when I get in the office, okay, here we got to do this, we got to check on this, we got to check on this, and then it's just cross them off the list. I have that for the big picture stuff that I always go back to. Okay, how does this get us to that? How does this help achieve this goal? And I think that, like I said, that legal pad for me is right in front of me all the time on my desk. And so I need the constant reminder, because there's just so much, the day is so fast, right? And I cross them off, and then the next day it's there. It's like, okay, I need to get that done today and move on to the next project, if you will.
All right, so what's one thing in your schedule that cannot be moved? Whether that be a family, whether that be a workout, whether that be lunch, breakfast. What is one thing in your schedule that no one is able to really move? Or maybe there's not one thing.
Right. Yeah, what I try not to move, for example, would be some quiet time and workout time, because I am a firm believer that if I don't get those things, in some form or fashion, I'm not as productive, throughout the rest of the day. I also know if those types of things don't get done in the morning before I'm in the office, by the time the lunch hour or evening rolls around, I'm not mentally or
So what time do you
physically
typically come in the morning?
I'll usually get in the office anywhere between 7 and 8 a.m.
Okay.
And then, but I'm usually up. The wife and I, we're empty nesters now, so our workouts are at 5:30 in the morning, and so we get that done together, and then I get the day started.
Okay.
I don't get to work out. I mean, obviously, look at this. There is no working out here.
I didn't say I look at it. I look like it. I just.
I would love to. I really would. We have two little ones, so we're on the opposite side of the spectrum.
There with you.
Parts of life.
Yeah, I think my senior staff is steady. Like, that doesn't change. Like, we meet Monday morning, first thing in the morning, and lay the week out. In the summer, and so that's constant. I have my other meetings with staff that rotate. But I think the family, I agree. And one of the things I really work on, and I talk to young staff and I talk to students, like, you got to take time for yourself. And I was so against that. Like, we talk about grind, and I appreciate it. I want to keep, but you need to. So I try to get, I say I try because it doesn't always work. I'm not answering your question, but a morning where I can either go to a Starbucks, go to a coffee shop, and just process everything that's coming, whether that's on a Friday morning, a Thursday morning, whenever it fits. I think that's paramount. And then when family stuff. So if there's something for my daughter, she's in 4th grade, so the end of the year graduation, that's huge. The pre-K graduation celebration. I make sure that that's firm, and that's where the assistant knows. She knows that's absolutely firm. I'm going to work everything around those events. I would, and then for me, I love that 5:30 in the morning time. My kids aren't up yet, and sometimes my wife will get up, and she's just as exhausted. She works harder than me with the two little ones, and we can just kind of, get yourself ready for the day. I think that time of day really, whether it's working out, which I wish I could, but just
sets the tone.
It really does. It gives you that, like, okay, let's attack the day.
So talking about getting things done, again, that's the whole centralized theme here. What can your direct reports, so deputy AD, associate AD, senior associate, maybe even a director, what can we do to make your jobs easier? Recently at Troy University, we started a external operations review. It's a weekly review that I compile with all of my direct reports that I give to my director of athletics. It's essentially, it's a one-sheeter of going on, good, bad, indifferent, things that we need to continue to work on. And that was because I realized quickly that his time is so valuable and it's so limited to be able to, so he can very, very quickly on a Sunday night or a Monday morning be able to flip through. Is that, what do you do for that? So you can stay abreast on things and not necessarily need to have an hour or 2 meeting a day.
Right. For me personally, I subscribe to the manage up philosophy. So with my president, I'm always managing up. I want to make sure that he's not having to come to me asking questions. I'm feeding him the information that I feel like he needs to know. I try to do a great job of filtering information, so I'm not giving him too much micro, but he needs a macro. And to your point, that's exactly what I ask of my staff, is to manage up. Feed me the information that you feel, I need to be aware of. Don't overload me, because I have so much bandwidth. And if you try to get me too much, you'll see the frustration on my face. But for me, it's the manage up philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And I tell the staff, trust your instincts. They always try to read my mind and make a decision. Not always. And I was like, no, we brought you here because you're good at what you do. And some of those things, just go and attack it. And if you make a mistake at 100 miles per hour. The big issues, the one pager is great. Here's what's going on. Boom, boom, boom. Here's what ticket sales strategy is. Here's how we're fundraising. Here's what we're going. Because then it simplifies it, and that's going back. Trusting your senior staff to give you the information that you need, and then them to take care of all the other stuff that goes on. There's a lot in those units, so I would agree. And then I fill that up, feed that to the president.
And to add to that, as I share with my staff again, none of us, we don't like surprises, right?
No.
So I have no problem, if you come to me, with a challenge or a obstacle or a problem even. But don't just come and hand it off to me. Bring me a couple solutions, and I may not like those, and we'll work it out together, and we can make some adjustments, but never come to me with a problem and no solution.
Gotcha. Well, this typically never happens, but hypothetically, let's go with this, that you're actually given an extra 2 hours in a day, okay, that you need to tackle. Just a random day, everything you've been able to accomplish every single thing, capital campaign went well, you just got a coach extended, whatever that is, but you're given 2 hours. How would you spend those 2 hours, Bryan?
Wow. The job itself would probably consume those, unfortunately, right?
I was just going to say
2 more hours in the
this
day
is
to
a
work.
mythical world.
That's right. But in a perfect world, I would make great effort to spend that time with my wife.
Gotcha.
Oh, there's no doubt. I would go home in 2 seconds and sit on the front porch, watch the kids run around and play in the water. I mean, I think that having children for me it was a game changer, because it does refocus your priorities exponentially. So I would go home and watch Doc McStuffins on TV with my kids and really just be present there.
All right, so we talk about getting things done, and as a CEO of the athletic department, which y'all both are, how do you prioritize other people's times who they need to get things done? So I'm the deputy AD, or you have a senior associate, they need to be able to get things done, and you need to push them, but at the same time, you have to balance that with their families if they have them, or significant others. How do you ensure that they're getting the right quality time with their family so they can be the most, the best at their work?
My staff would tell you that I'm a huge advocate of recovery and rejuvenation for staff. We do a pretty good job in our industry of applying that to our student athletes, right? Get in the training room, get in the hot tub, cold tub, eat correctly, sleep correctly. But I preach very hard to my staff that, particularly in the summertime, right, I need you to find time to get away. I need you to get recharged, because once August 1 or thereabout rolls around, we're all full go for a year, if you will. And so that's one element. Two, but I think any, good leaders can really sense, when to push and when to back off. And I'm not good at a lot of things, but that's usually one area that I can sense pretty well, whether I need to approach a staff member a certain way or push them more or not, or back off, just kind of based on their body language and how they're approaching the job.
I think it goes to transparency and communication. Say, hey, that's okay. I want that. We talk about family all the time in our office, and I want them to feel comfortable. Like, hey, my son, I got to get out early. I would never. I know how hard they work. I know what their schedule is, and so we have just a very open, honest dialogue. Hey, yeah, that's great. Get out. I talk about in the summer. You've got to take time away, because the more you, it is a grind, and I think we have a very open. An honest kind of office, I guess, if you will, and everyone's like, no, hey, I'm gonna, in Philly, it's different too, because it takes you 30 minutes to get home, and it's not a small college town, and so we really work through that, and the key is just communicating, but yeah, I would think they would believe that, hey, and I'm good with that. I'm not one of those that, I know if you're working hard and how hard you're working, and our jobs, there's no weekends off. I mean, it is. So, I think it is important to let them know that they feel comfortable doing that.
Emotional intelligence is extremely
Yes.
important as being part of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
But Brian, Pat, thanks for being on with
Thank you.
ADU.
Thank you.
Hopefully everybody enjoyed this session.